I'm a chartered financial consultant, and today we're talking about Apple. I know that there were a few of you that were on and we had a little technical difficulty, kind of interesting from that standpoint, but let's go ahead and begin into the daily stock analysis. I think that you're really going to enjoy the talk that I have today about Apple because there's a lot that's been going on with it even before the election. So let's take a look and see actually what's been going on with Apple and begin with the daily stock analysis. All right, we're going to be talking about Apple today. I'm sorry for that if you had to come back on a little bit later. I appreciate you coming back. Interestingly enough, in my review of Microsoft, I'll be talking about how conveniently they do updates because the update threw me out and I couldn't play you the video, which was an integral part of telling you about what's going on with Apple today. So as you go through this information, I want you to pay particular attention to this. I want you to pay attention, if you would, to the different sectors that Apple is selling products in, because those particular sectors are going to determine what's going on in the future. Apple actually came out with a good third quarter result, and part of that was not because of their banner product, which is their iPhone. I use an iPhone. It's a great product. It's there with my OtterBox. But that particular product is usually the one that's their banner product. But the iPad was one that kept going forward in some of the ancillary products as well. So as you take a look at this also, at this short video, it's about 28 seconds long, pay attention to the countries that are participating in the growth of Apple. And I want you to think of how the coronavirus pandemic is affecting some of those different areas of the world, because that's going to have a big impact on how Apple's going to grow over the next year. Apple did not issue guidance for their coming quarter. A lot of times a company, they'll have a pretty good idea about what's going to be happening for the next quarter or the next year, and they'll give you some verbal guidance. Well, Tim Cook, the CEO, did not give any guidance. He said that it's going to be he's very bullish on next year in the call that came forward, but they didn't give any specifics from that. But let's take a look a little bit deeper at the areas that they grow in and that they do business, and then let's talk about the possibilities for growth going forward. So let's watch this together. Let me make the screen just a little bit bigger for both of us so that we can see what's going on. Here we go. Now, Apple is at $1.8 trillion. That's just such a huge number that you can't really fathom it as an individual. It's huge. It's the net worth of countries in itself. But pay particular attention, if you would. Look with me at this. If we look at some of the different areas that they are doing business, you were probably surprised that the majority of their sales do not come from the Americas. When I say Americas, that's including Central and South America too, as well as Canada, which is in North America, of course. But the idea is that they're not the majority of the sales. The majority of sales are outside of the Americas. As we look a little bit further forward, you can see that Europe's only a quarter of their sales, but then China is up and coming. China's are pretty close to 15%, and there's a lot of things going on in China that can push the value forward of Apple, not just where they're producing it. Japan has a significant foothold, as do the other Asian countries. Vietnam, some of the South Korea, some of those particular areas of the world have a big impact on the value of this stock going forward. And we're going to talk more about when's the best time to buy, or perhaps what's the best price to buy Apple at, and look at it from that viewpoint. Now, when I talk to you about any stocks, I'm going to talk about three different things. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is the stability. And the stability that we've been talking about so far has been the different countries that they're diversified in and the different types of sales that they have. We also want to take a look at the earnings of these stocks, of the stocks we talk about, and see how dependable they are and how you feel about it going forward. We also focus on the competitiveness. Now, when we get to the part about their competitors, you're going to note that there's not a lot of competitors for Apple. There's really not. Yes, there's a lot of cell phone makers, but there's none of them that are really as big as Apple going forward. Warren Buffett was one of the first people that talked about the moat of a company. Now, remember, he portrayed it as that, if you have a castle, which is your business, you want to build a moat around that castle so it's going to keep away competitors. And let's look really at what that competitive advantage is for Apple right now. And the biggest one is really switching cost. I've been into it. If you've got any type of cell phone service, you think, well, I don't want to get out of it right now. I might have a penalty or I'm paying for this phone or whatever the case is going to be. So it also has to do with the ancillary products. The Apple apps and everything else don't transfer over to Android. They have a lot of intangible assets that have patents, they have talent, and they have a great resource that goes along with it. Furthermore, if we look at the fact of the customer base, Apple has an incredible customer base. In a survey that was done, 90% of US phone users for iPhone are loyal. They'll say that they're not going to switch. They have a 98% customer satisfaction. In 2018, they had 1.4 billion users. In 2019, that grew to 1.5 billion users. I think that Apple has more than a narrow moat, but it does have a big competitive advantage going forward. If we look at the earnings, now it may look spiky if you're just looking at this at first, but you have to understand that they do pay a quarterly dividend out. And what you really want to pay attention to is, do they meet their earnings expectations? And the answer to that question is yes, absolutely, they do meet earnings expectations. So the bulls, let's look and see what the bullish analysts are saying. Now, before, when we're talking about the emerging markets like China and the Asian countries and Japan, that is a big part of Apple growing. And if the coronavirus is going rampant in Europe, which is 25% of their sales are going to be depressed. So you might not see the value of this stock move quite as forward as you might expect. The other bullish aspect is that iPhones and the iOS system are key advantages, and they do have continuing innovations that are going forward. They're into the Apple Pay, Apple Watch, Apple TV, the AirPods, and also they're going to be significant players in the 5G phones. But there has to be more network. Now, what are some of the bad things? What are some of the bearish things that analysts are saying? They're saying actually that some of their prices are hurting them. Look, I've got a phone. It's doing great. It's actually an iPhone 7. I'm not really looking to replace it right now and spend $1,000. If you have an iPhone, even though that you may have had it for a few years, are you ready to go buy it just because Apple came out with the i12? That's a big problem, especially when you look at it and it's $1,000. That could hurt growth. One bad update could hurt the value. Think about this. How many times do you have on your smartphone an update? Everything with Apple seems to work, but be cautious because one bad update could really crater the price temporarily. And if you're looking to buy, that might be something as a buying opportunity. The other thing is Apple is really behind in AI. Ask Siri, who's smarter, you or Alexa? You won't get an answer, but Alexa is smarter than Siri. Now let's look at what some of the analysts are saying right now. Morningstar says that actually the fair market value of Apple is $86. I think that's kind of low. That's my opinion. And if we look at what some of the other analysts are going to say, you're going to see that it actually is a little bit low too. Morningstar is saying that it's selling right now at about a 26% premium. They only give it 2 stars. Remember, the star system is different for mutual funds than it is for stocks when we look at Morningstar. When we look at what the average analyst is saying out there, The average analyst, this is followed a lot. There's only 24 of them that are listed here. 16 of them are very bullish on Apple, saying it's a strong buy. The average comes out to a strong buy. But really, pay attention to this. If you can, I'm going to zoom up on this just a little bit because this is one of the more important charts we're going to look at. We're going to look at the options that are available, the puts and calls in just a minute. But let's look really at what some of the pricing is here. Now, this is Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs probably has the lowest price that they're looking for right now. They're looking at $75 as selling price. If it goes below that, I would imagine that they would sell from that. But when we look at it from the standpoint of probably the highest price right now is an analyst called Wedbush. Wedbush has a price between 130 and 150. Personally, I think that if we get to a price around 96, it's really buy what you can. That's my buying price, quite frankly. So let's look a little bit at the options. Oh, one more thing I do want to pay attention to is the dividends. They do have good dividends. It's a 0.75 dividend. It's not huge, but it's very steady and it's increasing on a regular basis. The price, well, yeah, the price has gone crazy over the past 5 years. It's gone from $28 a share, 31% average per year, 287%. Yeah, the past performance is not a guarantee of the future results, but hey, at $108, I'm praying for 96, quite frankly. All right, how do they compete? Now, this is kind of confusing because there's really, tell me, who is a phone maker out there that makes phones that really compete? Samsung, it's hard to buy the stock of Samsung. You can, but it's an over-the-counter stock. They're a competitor. Lenovo, I've got them up here. Let's take a look at some of the ones that might be more competitors. Google, yes, but Google really doesn't compete on the phone. Nokia, yeah, there are some Nokia phones out there that do compete. Microsoft, yeah, there's a Microsoft phone, but it's not as popular as an iPhone. And if we look at Lenovo, actually in China, Lenovo is more competitive. Actually, Lenovo, if you didn't know it, is the old IBM ThinkPad. That's where it started. And as far as looking at the spaghetti graph, Apple is still doing extremely well. And when you compare Apple to Microsoft, which are the two closest, they're in completely different areas. So there's, in my opinion, if you're buying an Apple stock right now, there's not very much that's going to be competing with it. Let's take a look a little bit right now at what the options market is on this. This tells me what the sentiment is of this particular stock. Now, remember, when you have puts and calls are basically going to be a call to buy. This is a contract to buy. The biggest contract right now, if you can follow the dancing cursor, they're looking at 110. All right. This is exercising these prices on or before November the 6th. Remember, at November the 6th with an options contract, it expires if you just let it go out. But these people right now, there are some that could exercise this currently, but they're not. They could exercise it at 110. There are 40,000 contracts that are out there right now. The puts, this is going to be the ones to sell, and there are 23,000 contracts out there right now, and they're looking at a price at 105. We might be getting to that. If we see a very bullish market going forward, some of these aren't going to make any difference. You might be looking to buy at 110 if it goes over top of it, but we're not going to see that go down from that standpoint. There was actually what they call a whale that bought a lot of options on the S&P 500, several $1 million worth of options, did that today, and they're looking to buy it on a bullish prospect going forward. And the market was up quite a bit today from that standpoint. So in my opinion, I'm still looking for that $96 price per share. I might not get it, but that's what I'm hoping for right now at about 108. That's not bad. It was down a little bit today. We'll just have to see how the election affects it, how the coronavirus. Now, the coronavirus is probably going to have more of an impact on the value of this stock than anything. And if you like this stock, buy it on the dips. Don't wait for it to surge and say, I want to jump in on top of this thing. If it gets up to around 120, 115, you need to maybe wait just a little bit. Look for where it's at now, below it, get down to 96. That's what I'm looking at. But that's my estimation. Remember that the past performance of an investment is not going to be the guarantee of a future result. And I'm curious, some of you that are out there, tell me what you're looking at right now. What price are you looking to buy Apple at? Or are you looking to sell? You know, if you look at Goldman wants to sell it when it gets down to 75. Now, if it gets to 75, I think everybody's going to be buying, quite frankly. But what are you looking at too? Okay, now I want to end today with this. I've got a lot of requests from people to do more analysis like this for other stocks. I am glad to do that, and I'm going to do that. So continue to put your request into whatever platform that you're listening on, whether it's Twitter, Periscope, Facebook, or on YouTube. Let me know what you think. I'll try to get to it. I'm going to pick some of the larger companies like the one that I went through today, and some of those that are having earnings calls like Microsoft or have had it, because those are important stocks to follow and to talk about. So with that, I'm going to end today and encourage you, if you haven't voted, go out and vote. Vote for a capitalist. All right, folks, y'all have a very good evening, and go vote tomorrow.